This is Nick the Mining Book Guy. Today is midday, December 6th, 2017. And as you can see, this presentation is on Minotaur Exploration, which is MEP on the ASX. Another ASX company for you. But I want to be clear that even though the main purpose of this video is to give you exposure to this company that North Americans mostly seem completely unaware of, I have to give a huge amount of credit to my broker, Sam Broom from SprottGlobal, who I've mentioned in a previous video before, but he's kind of a feature of this video, considering there was no way I would have made as large a bet as I have on this company without his input and invaluable research from his end. And that goes for Sprott in general, but still, specifically for Sam, I will have more to say about that. But I also want to focus in on positioning and risk reward as a speculator, which is more where I'm focused on. And I'm going to take you somewhat step by step of how I went through deciding how much I was going to buy, evaluating risk reward, using the help of people like Sam, but still, this is the type of decisions that you and I have to make as speculators in the junior mining industry. I also want to note that this whole presentation is backloaded with a ton of additional resources on Minotaur if you want to do deeper research, and some very important final notes with Sam, or on Sam, but I'm going to try to keep it relatively simple to start, and then there'll be all sorts of extra stuff for the crazies who like watching my entire videos. But before I get into some of the basic stuff, I need to give a shout out to Fabian J, but Fabi, specifically at the Next Big Rush, always organizes these great video chats that we do, speculator roundtables. You can see here, Cobalt Ideas Speculator Roundtable number 5. This has just started, and her posting it has just started. It's possible that you are coming here by having started at the Next Big Rush. I had mentioned a super secret stock pick in one of those videos that she'll be releasing very soon. And this is the stock pick. I didn't tell Fabi or Jay. I didn't tell anybody. So this is one of the first times I really didn't tell anybody at all privately in advance. So everyone's on the same page. If you're watching this right after the release, you are the first people to hear about Minotaur Exploration. So without further ado, I would say if you didn't listen to anything else in this presentation, this PowerPoint from November 30th, just last week, it's an incredible cheat sheet that came out from the company, and you could get probably everything you need to know, but again, I'm still going to go through some of the interesting risk reward and positioning side. I just wanted to focus in so you know where they're doing work. Our number one project is the Eloise project in Queensland, Cloncurry district, very developed up here in Australia. And a number 2 project we'll talk about is near Prominent Hill with Minotaur. Both of these involve Oz Minerals as a partner. Minotaur is a prospect generator, which is relatively rare in Australia. That's not a key concern of ours, but we will discuss the importance of these 2 projects and a little bit more on what they're doing. But back to the Eloise JV, this was the key news release. Also very important, I barely was following this company until October 23rd when I did notice a potential important discovery was made here. I'm always intrigued by these news releases because this particular one has lots of interesting information but doesn't actually have assays. You're still waiting on the assays, but you have all this other stuff to attempt to interpret. And there's some really interesting details here that I would not be able to interpret on my own. There's some interesting geophysical type data, which is what these guys specialize in. More on that later. You can see there's 3 different conductors here, but in terms of things I initially get excited about, I notice one of these drill holes drills through 3 conductors and actually seems to get mineralization in all 3. That's intriguing even though I don't understand technicals. You can start to see a core photo here, but then you've got some really interesting core photos here. Now, to me on my own, these are just pretty colors, oh, neat, like yellows and browns and stuff. But I immediately contacted Sam. In fact, this news release came out overnight since I'm in the US. And so in the morning, I call Sam right after the bell, at least, the Canadian bell opens. And I usually do talk to Sam on a fairly regular basis in the mornings. And he was on top of this as well. And what started to get me really excited is that he was excited about these core photos. And this is one thing I love about this industry. You have to take everything on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes core gives you a totally distorted view. It's either much more exciting or much less exciting than what the actual results are. It depends on the commodity, but this is a copper gold play, and this is giving very good indications of copper, at least from what Sam had told me. You can see here the chalcopyrite is in yellow. I think this is where you get some really juicy intersections, and it ties in well with the descriptions. And even though I don't want to share, all the proprietary research that comes from Sam and SprottGlobal, I can tell you that once we got the results, he was pretty much spot on with his guesstimates of what the percent, of copper would be. And so that was exciting in itself. But before knowing for sure, I was interested enough to at least get a position. And this is important. I didn't even remember that much about the company, but I went from no position to roughly 1% of my portfolio. By the way, I should have given these disclosures earlier, but since you're listening now, I own a ton of shares. This is my largest position right now, probably my largest position. It is my largest position ever on a pure cost basis. I may buy or sell shares at any time. And any errors, anything I'm talking about, other people saying things, are mine and mine alone. So I want to be crystal clear about that. But I'm telling you why I made this my largest position ever, but it wasn't right from the beginning. I just went from 0 to roughly a 1% position on my portfolio. And on that note, I started to look more into the history. This is just a nice shout out. Neil Adshead, you can see here, he used to be a geologist, in-house geologist at Sprott. I was lucky enough to meet him in person and talk to him for the first time when I was at Beaver Creek at the Precious Metals Summit back in September of this year. I just ran into him at the cocktail hour. He had told me that he really likes Sam. Sam's a top guy. I already knew that, of course, but just reinforces it. And I just wanted to share this, that this was a really good article from Neil. Actually, podcast interview, you can do either. Takoa da Silva, I know, is another broker at Sprott, but I just wanted to share this because Neil was the first person that I had heard about Minotaur a couple years ago, and that was when John Sebastian was my broker prior to Sam. John's very good. He's no longer at Sprott either, but this is a great example of a company that was kind of on my radar for a couple years. I know that at the time Neil had said this was top management, but they weren't on to this discovery yet. So you can read this to get some good information, general information about speculating in this industry from Neil. But this is often how it goes. I hear about a company, it kind of falls off my radar, and then all of a sudden, bam, it just comes right back on. And so this started at Sprott. I wouldn't have heard about Minotaur without Sprott, but I didn't really get interested in it again until I brought it up with Sam at this discovery. Then I also did some research just on the JVs. This particular JV with Oz Minerals, it can lead up to a $10 million Australian payments from Oz that go into the ground for drilling out this JV, where Minotaur will be left with 30%. That's something to keep in mind. Sometimes these are 100% owned projects, sometimes they're JV'd. But even at 30%, if this becomes a big deal, that's going to be worth quite a bit. And I guess before I get into the actual results, just to give you a clear indication, at this time, the company's worth You can see it over here, worth 26 million. They had just raised money almost simultaneous with these results. 3 or 4 million in cash. So right now it's about a 22 million enterprise value. But when I first started buying, it was closer to 15, under 20 million enterprise. But that's, for me, that's an interesting sweet spot. We're looking at end of October. So it already started moving, but not moving a huge amount. But let's go right back into November 3rd. So soon afterwards, we're only talking a month ago from now, we got the assays. And so this is where I give a lot of credit that Sam was pretty much spot on from my memory with his guesstimates. These are really nice holes. I think, this is one hole, but these are nice results. Let me just show you real quick. Oh yeah, these together, 27 meters, 2.4% copper, almost a gram per ton gold. That's something that I think is going to be economic, even though this is relatively deep, because these are blind targets. You needed geophysics to actually target them, and a lot of the future drilling probably will be relatively deep. 400 meters down hole or so, but we want to see more of that. Now, importantly, the other holes had decent mineralization, or the other intersections. There actually was another hole I'll get to in a minute. Well, let me keep scrolling down here. Yeah, so this is the really cool, the great hole, and this was another hole I didn't mention earlier, but this is great info. Like, this confirms that they're onto an economic discovery. At least it seems like it could be if you get more holes like this. And I don't want to go into all the details. Like, this is the stuff where, I get it from talking to Sam. Again, invaluable. But because of the nature of this drilling, because it's based on geophysics, this was the only hole that was a really good hole so far. This was another hole that showed decent mineralization, almost 1% copper, half a gram gold. Look at all the potential strike here. You add this up, these three different conductors, it's up to 9 kilometers. And so that's the blue sky potential. That's what's exciting. That's what, I'm in this industry because I, see this stuff, and you get enough information where you get a really good risk reward. So again, I was only at a 1% of my portfolio, and I started talking to Sam. This is another valuable aspect. Even though I like doing my own research, when you have a good full service broker like Sam, they can, go above and beyond. And in this particular case, I know that Sprott has ownership in Minotaur, but it doesn't mean Sam has to go out and do an awesome, interview with basically call up management and talk to them and get more notes. But that's exactly what Sam did, and he shared that with me, and it just gave me, further reason to more than double down on this. Now, that's not something that Sam recommends to me. That's where the position sizing, it comes in from my own, chutzpah, I guess you could say. Like, I think this is where it doesn't matter. You don't have to be technical at all. You just got to start using your intuition and, your own strengths and weaknesses, and figure out, where will this be within a few months if I think this is a good speculative bet. Absolutely, the number one thing here is that there was barely any stock price movement when this came out. I mean, we're talking, this even you see these dips, ups and downs. It was barely moving, 20% either direction. I realized the market was not on top of this at all. I love that. I love it. It just, over and over again, I keep seeing this. You saw it with Xanadu and with Apollo, with these other companies. Notice that all my, plays that I really excited about are on the ASX. I don't know why. There are other ASX plays, Australian listed plays that get a ton of attention, but Minotaur did not. Like, people don't know Minotaur. And so I love all of these things together, and I bet big, because I started to think, and Sam helped me think this through, at least on the downside. I started to think, even if we have more holes that are somewhat mediocre or disappointing, I just didn't see this going down more than 30%, at least in the short term. So on the downside, I was thinking 6 or 7 cents Australian Definitely not worse than where it was before. But on the upside, this absolutely could be a 3 to 5 bagger pretty quickly. So you think about that risk reward. At least that's what I think about. It's so important. It doesn't have anything to do really with understanding all the geology. And I wanted to bet big. So I honestly went from 1% of my portfolio all the way to roughly like 18%. Huge amount. But I don't see this stuff that often. We really need copper discoveries. Even better that it's in a great jurisdiction, even better that it's a top management team. Again, Sprott helped me with that, but I did further research. I've got some more interesting resources on that at the end of this video. But this was the key. There was enough information for me to bet big. So my first purchases were, between 7-8 cents or so. It was, I believe, trading around 8.5 cents immediately after that news. I was basically buying all the way up to 10 cents. I bought huge, and then I kept buying even more when it came back to 9 or 8.5 cents. When all is said and done, my cost average, I believe, is around about 9.1 cents Australian. So there was enough liquidity here for me to keep buying, and this is about 251 million shares out. There are some options and warrants, but it's not some ridiculous share structure like some other Australian plays. So enough other things were positive. I bet huge, at least huge for me. And then we're moving forward some more. This was something I was aware of, but it definitely reinforced that to me on the downside. Things look pretty good. Worst case scenario, there's still other interesting projects. This is the separate project in South Australia near Prominent Hill, also an Oz Minerals JV. Sam helped me to understand that this was a lot more valuable than I initially realized. There's only 4 scout holes here, but this could be really exciting because it's around Prominent Hill, which I believe, maybe most people would say this is tier 1. I would say, maybe borderline tier 1 project. Very economic copper gold IOCG project. I believe it's producing, around 100,000 tons of copper a year and 100,000 ounces of gold, which is very, very good, but it's not in the top copper position, but still excellent mine. And these guys not only have a great relationship with, Oz Minerals has a great relationship with Minotaur, but they're willing to share, proprietary data. I think that says a ton. And the fact that Minotaur was the company that did the through a previous JV, a previous form of the company way back in 2001, actually discovered Prominent Hill. I didn't even realize that. I mean, that's why Minotaur is I think they're described as a tier 1 exploration company in here or somewhere in one of the news releases I read. Honestly, I think that you hear about Mirasol resources all the time from Brent Cook and Exploration Insights. I would go so far as to say that Minotaur is the Mirasol of prospect generators listed on the ASX, but nobody in North America knows about them except for Sprott. So reinforcing all those positives, but specific to this program, I misunderstood it at first. There's a $3 million budget, 50-50 funded, so a lot of the cash right now from Minotaur is going into this project because they have to pay it. But once you get through that, they will own 20%, and then they can spend another $2 million if they're finding something interesting to get an additional 10%. So all is said and done, this would also end up being roughly a 30 to 70 JV, but they're not being fully funded early on by Oz, just partially funded. But this is similar to how the Prominent Hill discovery happened, and that was a huge win for Oz, and it's the cornerstone asset. Sorry, huge win for Minotaur at the time, but it's a cornerstone asset of Oz right now. So it's all a little complicated to look through this, but you have access to all of these notes below this YouTube video. Now we're moving forward a little further, and literally a few days later, November 24th, we get confirmation that all the new scout holes intersected significant copper sulfide mineralization. I was super excited about this when I saw it. I think it happened on Thanksgiving or right around Thanksgiving, so it's kind of funny how that's a case. I've gone through that before where I've had to pay attention over holidays, US holidays, that there's exciting stuff happening somewhere else in the world. But in this particular case, you had all these new drill holes right around the initial hole, and they all hit copper. This is crucial. We know there is mineralization, and that it's at least similar to that first hole. But you start looking down at the core, it still looks pretty to me, but even I started to get the impression, okay, not quite as exciting as the first one. You're still seeing some yellows and some bronze, but there's a lot more non-copper gold mineralized stuff, or at least copper. This is the chalcopyrite here, not as clear as the first hole. And I talked to Sam about that, and I think he gave me some even better notes because we started to have a better idea of how the core relates to the actual assays. And I don't want to speak for him, but I do get the impression we're more likely looking at 1 or 2% copper intersections, maybe a gram of gold. I mean, we'll see on the gold side, rather than those 3 or 4% intersections. At least those narrower ones, I think it led to the 27 meters, 2.5%. So maybe we'll get some good stuff, but not quite as good as the best hole so far. From my perspective, again, this is crucial, I still like this a lot. The fact that they hit copper everywhere, it's huge. And the market, again, barely paid attention to this. At least that's my impression. But we should be tempered, or the grades are tempered, I think. So the risk reward profile immediately changed. Not necessarily hugely better or worse, but it's different. My interpretation is that the downside is actually even more limited. Like, we're really onto something, but the upside, I think it's less likely we're going to have that instant, 3 to 5 bagger, because I really felt that, just a week or two earlier, that could have been the case. Like, maybe they'd hit even better grades on those next holes. And that's the excitement of exploration plays. But from a risk-reward perspective, you could say this, in my opinion, one of the best in terms of having limited downside, but still very good upside. Honestly, I think it should be trading significantly higher than it is at this instant. But because I bought so many shares already, I was already up to roughly 18% of my portfolio. I did buy more shares on this news, but I went from roughly 18 to 20% of my portfolio. I think my last purchase was 9.4 cents. And then I was thinking, okay, this is so big. This position is actually twice as big as what my position was for Apollo in one of my previous videos, which has actually been my biggest win this year and was already a huge position. I think I'm good here. And that's where I just had to, keep some restraint. I am pretty much loaded up. I don't want to sell anything else to raise cash, and I don't have too much cash. So I'm very happy with the huge, for me, 20% position, 20% of my portfolio position in this company. But I'm very confident that the downside's limited and we still have very good upside. Hopefully all of that made sense. I'd actually be happy to discuss that a little more with people at ceo.ca, probably in my MBG Trends room. So I'll post something in there. That's more for the people that are really into this stuff. But I do think that position sizing, risk reward, that's something where I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but that's where I can help you the most. On the technical side, you need to talk to someone like Sam or the people, at SprottGlobal. But I really wanted to hone in on this because this is how I was really thinking about Minotaur during this past month. Back to this presentation where, again, it's a great cheat sheet that has the information I just provided and more. I'm going to scroll down just to show you, again, how exciting this is at this very moment. This is what I love, is that there's so many near-term catalysts, but we have this long-term potential exciting picture. We've got all these drill holes that don't have assays yet. I'm so glad they got these out because there was actually a monsoon season that's approaching that I didn't realize in Queensland, Australia, and they were able to get all these holes drilled. So we've got all these assays that are coming close to where the initial holes were. Visual descriptions are really good. And then we've got the prominent hill that is being drilled right now, and those assays are going to come out. And then you've got some interesting, nickel and gold prospects in Western Australia that are kind of icing on the cake. And so it doesn't so much matter that it's a prospect generator, but as I mentioned to other people, I love multi-catalyst companies because you always got something coming down the pipeline. Eloise with Oz Minerals, absolutely number one. We've got exciting stuff in as soon as I think a week from when this video is published, probably all the way through December, maybe into January, we will have drill results that are exciting. They do have a JV with JogMech. To me, that's not as exciting here, but that's something looking maybe next year. The number two thing is absolutely prominent hill, and we should have results coming in by January. Those could be really exciting because these are scout holes, and potential for near-term discovery. We'll see. But then the icing on the cake is Western Australia nickel gold, and that's nice because they can do some work here when you might be waiting on the next. Well, Eloise, you have to wait because of the monsoon season. You'll get back in April, but there's going to be a lot of fun stuff coming the next 3 or 4 months. So I guess to leave the first part of this presentation, I honestly think this should be trading at 40 or 50 million. And that's why I'm presenting it to you guys, even though it's already trading at 10.5 cents. There's been a lot of volume. Even though yesterday or last night 50,000-60,000 Australian dollars traded, something like that. It traded over $100,000 for consecutive days. So if you're a bigger player, you can buy in right now. There's definitely some selling pressure at 10.5, 11 cents. I'm happy because I'm sitting on 15, 20% gains depending on where it trades. Keep in mind, once you get to this over 10 cent level, it trades at the half cent. So it will trade 10.5, 11, 11.5. I will be honest and tell you, I may start selling a little bit as low as 14 cents because I'd be happy taking a little bit off the table with a 50% gain. But what I'm really looking for is at least a 2 or 3 bagger, and I think it could be a lot more. I could see this thing trading at 20 or 30 cents off these assays, and I really think it should be trading at least 15 cents or so right now. So I'm just giving you an indication, like, I'm definitely not selling my whole stake, but I could start selling a little bit soon. But it's absolutely a company deserving of your attention because there's all sorts of garbage companies or somewhat shady, hypey companies that are trading for so much more than this right now. But this is a legitimate discovery, and I'm so glad that I was able to talk to Sam to get me to realize I should make a big position. So I'd say very much consider at least a smaller position. But if you need more research, more background, this is the part of the presentation where I'm giving you some stuff that you can take a little bit more of a deep dive here. This was actually a really nice chairman's letter that came out with the AGM presentation. And I just wanted to note that these guys do say that one of their great strengths is the interpretation of geophysical data. And you wouldn't want to believe someone at face value, but this goes back to why I believe someone like Neil Adshead and even Andrew Jackson, who's the current lead geologist at Sprott, I think they both very much respect these guys from a technical side. Rick Rule surely does, and Sam does as well. So they are specialists there. Though keep in mind, if I didn't see the drill results and I was just basing it on geophysical data, I would want to be really honed in to these types of articles. And I want to give a quick shout out to Leslie Stokes, who's a lead writer at Northern Miner, new friend I made, also at Beaver Creek. I just think this, for taking a deep dive, this is the type of stuff you want to read. This was a neat article from a couple months ago on geophysical anomalies. Stuff I still don't fully understand, but I'll definitely keep looking back at it since I'm getting more interested in this stuff related to Minotaur. She also had a neat podcast, episode 76. I should listen to that again as well. It kind of covers the same things, but these are the types of things you want to, get immersed in to understand. Does this company? Well, this company specializes in geophysical data. you want to talk to experts, do your own research, and understand how this applies to this company potentially having a real strength here, or is the company BSing you? But in this particular case, they already got the drill results that came from the geophysical data, so you know something's working. So that made it easier for me. But if they didn't actually have the drill results yet, it would have been much more difficult for me to feel comfortable that these guys knew what they're doing. But another way for you to learn about this stuff, I love these Sprott University YouTube videos. These are narrated by Andrew Jackson, who, again, awesome, still at Sprott. A lot of my info is disseminated through Sam Broom, but Andrew or Andy Jackson, he's the guy who's kind of like right now the head honcho on the geology side. And I like this video because it talks about porphyry skarns and IOCG. So in this case, I've learned more about IOCG deposits by listening to this, and I'm not even close to an expert, but at least I can get a better handle on the different types of copper deposits. And I'm probably going to watch this again, probably for the third or fourth time. So I wanted to share that because it's another way for you to get a better understanding on your own. Back to some stuff that I specialize more in. There's this position sizing room, hashtag position sizing at CEO.ca. And I've contributed a bunch here, but I wanted to give a shout out to Excelsior because he's such a great contributor. I love it that he just had some recent contributions to this room. And what I was describing about me speculating on Minotaur absolutely fits into this. Someone like Excelsior, he has a very different thought process on position sizing, and that's great. But if you're serious about becoming a speculator, position sizing is one of the most important things that a lot of people don't take very much time to think about early on in their speculative career. I'm one of those. I think I lost more money than I should have early on because I wasn't paying attention to this. But there's no one clearly right way for this. But I'll just reinforce some of the things I've already described in here. For me, really big positions are 10 to 20% of my portfolio. But I would be extremely hesitant at this time to go much beyond that, at least on a cost basis level. So I always like to do at least a 5% position for my big ones, but the really big ones, I'll go 10% or more. So Excelsior will have a different view and some other people as well, but don't discount this. If you're kind of a newbie or you're new to speculation, check that room out at CEO.ca. I also want to give a quick shout out to Tupac, who is the only person who's commented in the Minotaur room. Not really for Minotaur, but I think this is very relevant because St. George Mining, which is a company I think he's made a lot of money in, is another example of an ASX company that no one at CEO.ca follows. It's just keep reinforcing that ASX companies are so interesting because you will have people at Hot Copper following them, which are mostly Aussies and Kiwis, but the North Americans barely follow them, and you can buy these things early because no one talks about them. And obviously I haven't talked about it, but that's because I was buying it up and I'll be talking about it a little more. So right now, barely anyone talking about that, but he did mention Oz Minerals. He tagged it wrong, but I did want to show you, Oz, it helped me a lot to realize Minotaur is a very solid company because Oz is a much better company than I realized. It's a mid-tier copper producer, and if you're looking more at producers, I would highly recommend you look at them because they've got this awesome deposit in Prominent Hill, but they have a great development project in Carapatina, and then they do these great JVs with companies like Minotaur. There was a great post by 90 Big Picture that no one was paying attention to. Hopefully he bought because I think he was absolutely right. This is a great cheap option on copper. If you look at the 3-year, looks pretty good to me. So 90 Big Picture is a good person to follow that I don't think gets enough credit. He was the first person to comment on it. Oliver's a good one too, though he doesn't post as much anymore. And Racker actually posted this great video, which I think is a very good summary of Oz back in 2016. It's a Bloomberg video, so I'd recommend checking that out. I'll have a link there as well. Now into some of the deeper technical stuff. These are examples of resources that Sam might have been aware of, but I dug them up on my own, sent them to him, and we discussed them a little bit. And I think that's another value of having a full service broker like Sam. What was kind of interesting, I hadn't even heard. So IOCG, iron oxide copper gold, ISEG, iron sulfide copper gold. To my understanding, this is not even a really widely used term. It was coined by the Minotaur guys. So you can't just assume these guys are geniuses, but I really feel they are the top exploration team for these style deposits. And I don't understand all this stuff, but I'm sure I'll be looking back at this. This was a very interesting technical presentation that they created. And I think it's worth looking into. Maybe if you're a geo listening to this, you might be more interested than I am. So that's one thing that kind of reinforces their expertise. This was something I found from Oz Minerals back in 2011. Very detailed, but when I shared it with Sam, he pointed out that previous teams, in fact, since this is getting long, why not get a little longer? Going down to, where was it? A page, I think I went a little, it's right here. Yeah, the discovery of Prominent Hill, this also reinforces the importance of strong technical teams. Prior to Minotaur, other companies had tried to discover in the Prominent Hill area, and they missed by a few hundred meters. And that's what's exciting about discovery. Sometimes just having a better team with a different methodology, they will hit the mother lode. And in this particular case, when that discovery happened, this was in some older PowerPoints. You can see Minotaur was rewarded, and Oz, or at least a different form of Minotaur and a different form of Oz, were partnered in this, and it was basically an instant 20 bagger. And so I'm not saying this is going to happen again, but they've done it before. It's always great to bet on a team that's been involved with a world-class discovery. And so hopefully, seeing this reinforces that this is a serious team that barely anyone in North America seems to follow. I also wanted to point out hot copper is always a good resource. In this particular case, I think there was a lot of good discussion, but it was the same types of people. And even to this day, this has not been a hyped up stock, but it's not like it's been completely ignored either. So, I give a shout out to Seth Davis, who I've seen some good stuff from. There's some others too that I can't remember their names, but very good info for me to have used for research. But it also helped me to realize Minotaur is still not at a real hype stage that it probably deserves to be compared to other Australian plays. That's one reason I like following hot copper, to kind of figure out how excited other people are, and I don't think they're excited enough yet. Maybe this video will help get people more excited about this discovery. Again, the presentation from November 30th, number one thing for you to look at. And now we're ending with Sam. If you stuck with me this long, that means you're probably a little bit like me and you can't get enough of research. And I just want to emphasize that for me, having a full service broker like Sam is absolutely invaluable. But I know there's so many people out there that want to save a ton of money. They'd rather only pay $10 or $20 at most per trade. I pay, I believe, consistently over $100 per trade for my ASX trades. Now, some people will call that blasphemous, but when I can get access to companies like Minotaur and get invaluable feedback from it, it's more than worth it, especially for the size of the bets I'm making and the expected reward. So that's a hurdle for some people, but if you're willing to pay up for full service brokers, I would say that the best people that could potentially become clients of Sam, like myself, are people like myself, people that want to do a lot of research, and they don't even have to have that much money, but you like coming up with your own ideas and sharing ideas. This is totally for you. With a caveat, I hope you don't end up taking all of the time that I use with Sam. Honestly, I talk to him at least a few hours every week, which seems like a ton, but I probably could talk more if he had more time. So I hope I hope a few people like me are interested, but I hope not too many people. So that's just kind of a joke. But I'm willing to to really promote Sam here because I've already gotten so much value out of him. Now, if you're not like me, but you're an accredited investor, which I'm not, and you're able to access private placements, well, I would absolutely recommend you do that, because for companies like Minotaur, it's very possible that only Sprott will have access to those placements. There have been previous companies like that. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Minotaur, but having a broker like Sam, in addition to you trading on a different platform, that absolutely works. Like, you could just use Sprott for access to private placements. So that's something to consider as well, though I personally use Sprott for all of my trading and I don't have access to private placements, just to give you an idea. Now, you can always contact him yourself. You've got phone and email, but if you know me and you'd like an intro, I'd be happy to do so. So, that's just me trying to, help Sam get a little more business, even though it might be a little bit to the detriment of myself. I think it'd be cool if there were a few more people like me, or a few more people who are accredited who wanted to become, clients of Sam via SprottGlobal, just because you watched this video. So I think we've covered everything we needed to. Minotaur, even if you don't buy it, you better follow it, because this is an exciting copper gold discovery with a lot more going on. And you might not have heard of it, especially if you're not already a client of Sam's, or you're not like me and you're searching for all these ASX plays. I'm sure there'll be a lot of exciting stuff happening in the next few months, and feel free to discuss this more with me at ceo.ca if you want, but I'll hope to have more book reviews and company stuff for you in the future. Thanks for listening. This is Nick, the Mining Book Guy. Talk to you soon. Bye.